And we're back with more breaking news, this time about a major American automaker stopping down production as car prices are already sky high.
And I really want to thank the president for really working with the industry and understanding the challenges. So we had a very good idea of what some of the steps and actions would be taken.
It began not with an explosion, but with silence. On the floor of a once thriving factory in Detroit, the clatter of assembly lines fell still. Conveyors froze mid-motion. Tools were dropped. Workers stared at one another, wordless, stunned. Then the confirmation came. General Motors was shutting down. Again. But this wasn't the result of a financial collapse. It wasn't a semiconductor shortage or a global pandemic this time. This was a calculated internal decision, a pivot by the largest car maker in the United States to slash operations and retool for the electric future. Entire plants were going dark. Jobs, thousands of them, were wiped away in a matter of hours. Towns built around these factories were gutted overnight. In the background, a political powder keg was about to ignite. At its heart, Mary Barra, CEO of GM, and Donald Trump, former U.S. president, now back on the campaign trail and eager to seize a moment. What followed wasn't just a clash of policy. It was a battle over what it means to be American in the 21st century economy. GM's announcement came with sterile corporate language, but its implications were thunderous. Production was halting across multiple states and provinces. In Ontario, the CMI plant building electric delivery vans was shuttered. 1,200 workers sent home. No ceremony, just pink slips. Across the border in Michigan, GM's Factory Zero, once hyped as a crown jewel of the electric revolution, also hit pause. Nearly 200 more jobs gone. Vehicles that had been pitched as the future sat dormant, half built on quiet lines. The company called it a temporary retooling, but that wasn't the whole truth. When the machines come back to life, they will do so on a single shift, not three. Hundreds of jobs are not coming back. The message to America's blue-collar heartland was clear. This transition has casualties. Then came Trump. At a campaign rally under stadium lights, flanked by American flags and roaring supporters, he called GM's move a betrayal. With dramatic flair and signature fire, Trump transformed a business decision into a populist thunderclap. His voice boomed through speakers. Every car not made on American soil is going to face a 25% tariff. Period. The political earthquake was instant. Trump had turned a wrench into a weapon. Markets convulsed. Investors dumped shares. Automakers scrambled to assess the damage. Within days, GM slashed its earnings projections, warning that the tariffs could hit them with a $5 billion blow. Supply chains, already strained, were now in chaos. Mary Barra took the microphone next, not in front of a crowd, but behind boardroom doors. She warned Wall Street that GM would no longer issue forward guidance. The road ahead, she said, was too volatile to predict. To the average worker, it sounded all too familiar. The echoes of 2018, when GM closed 5 plants and cut 14,000 jobs, came rushing back. Back then, it was optimization. Now it was survival. The new tariffs were more than numbers in a spreadsheet. They were a declaration of economic war. No loopholes, no exemptions, not even for allies. Any vehicle or part made outside the U.S. would be taxed into submission. Trump's message was simple: build here or pay the price. In Windsor, Ontario, Stellantis, formerly Fiat Chrysler, was forced to shut its minivan plant. For 1,500 jobs gone. South of the border in Mexico, 2,500 more disappeared. Even in Michigan and Indiana, nearly 1,000 U.S. workers were suddenly without paychecks. Parts weren't crossing borders. Assembly had stopped. The chain reaction was just beginning. Auto suppliers across the Midwest were squeezed into oblivion. Die shops that had survived COVID closures were now shuttering for good. One by one, the dominoes fell. An estimated 10,000 to 12,000 parts workers in Canada alone were off the job. And that might be conservative. These weren't just layoffs. This was economic trauma. Meanwhile, consumers braced for impact. Analysts warned that vehicle prices could spike by thousands of dollars. Panic set in. Dealerships saw a rush of customers desperate to grab old inventory before the supply vanished. But once those lots emptied, the party was over. And through it all, GM tried to stay on message, talking about green tech, sustainability, and the electric future. But none of that mattered to the man who just lost his job. Because for him, this wasn't about lithium. It was about his mortgage. Across the ocean, foreign governments took notice. In the United Kingdom, mandates on electric vehicle adoption were quietly delayed, giving manufacturers a lifeline amid Washington's volatility. In Brussels, European leaders warned of retaliatory tariffs. In Tokyo and Seoul, automakers convened emergency meetings. The question on everyone's mind: is America still a reliable trade partner? Because this wasn't just domestic unrest. It was a global tremor. And in the middle of the storm was General Motors, now trapped between politics, production, vision, and viability. The pivot to electric was never going to be easy, but with tariffs turning every shipment into a liability, the journey had become a minefield. Then came the meeting. Behind closed doors at the White House, Mary Barr sat across from Trump's advisors. Tension hung thick in the air. On one side, a president demanding loyalty. On the other, a CEO bound by global economics. She came armed with facts, spreadsheets, projections, supply chain diagrams. Because this wasn't about outsourcing for profit. It was about where the parts actually exist. EVs don't run on dreams. They run on lithium, cobalt, and nickel, none of which come from Michigan. They come from the Democratic Republic of Congo, from Australia, from Chile. Building electric cars means building where the materials are. That's the reality. And Trump's tariffs didn't make room for reality. GM, to its credit, was investing domestically. Battery plants in Nevada, assembly hubs in Michigan, a sprawling gigafactory in Tennessee. But even with billions on the line, you don't reshape an industry overnight. And political turbulence can kill a deal faster than a missed earnings report. Back on the ground, none of this mattered to the families who were hurting. A single mother in Ontario, forced to sell her car to make rent. A laid-off welder in Flint, dipping into his retirement savings to cover grocery bills. A factory foreman in Indiana, wondering if his kids should drop out of college. This wasn't theory. It was life. And every delayed part, every closed border, every tariff, added up to one thing: uncertainty. And Donald Trump knew exactly how to weaponize that uncertainty. He didn't just criticize GM. He turned it into a symbol, not of innovation, not of clean energy, but of betrayal. At rallies, he pointed to shuttered plants as proof that corporate America had lost its soul. He spoke of workers like they were soldiers abandoned on the battlefield. And in an election year, every lost paycheck became a vote waiting to be claimed. GM, meanwhile, stayed the course, publicly calm, privately anxious. Their mission was clear: transition to an electric future before competitors from China, Germany, and Korea beat them to it. But Trump's tariffs weren't just political roadblocks. They were landmines buried in GM's blueprint. Suppliers were pulling out. Foreign partners hesitated. Long-term investment was suddenly a short-term risk. On Capitol Hill, the chaos spilled over. Lawmakers on both sides scrambled to contain the fallout. Some proposed emergency relief funds for displaced workers. Others pushed for subsidy reforms, tying government support to Made in America requirements. Quietly, Economists whispered a warning. If North America's supply chain fractures now, we may never recover it. Wall Street reacted swiftly. GM stock plunged. Billions in market cap were lost in hours. Analysts issued downgrades citing unpredictable production windows, tariff exposure, and political volatility. The so-called electric revolution had taken a sharp detour into crisis. On the streets of Flint, Toledo, and Lordstown, families felt it. Some delayed retirement. Some closed their family-owned businesses. Some pulled their children out of college. This wasn't just an economic event. It was generational upheaval. Meanwhile, as political pundits filled airwaves and YouTubers debated EV policies, one truth became increasingly clear. This wasn't just a story about cars. It was a story about identity, about what it means to work, to build, to belong, about the tension between a future racing forward and a present left behind. And as GM continued down its winding path, and Trump ramped up the rhetoric, the outcome of the standoff grew larger than the company itself. It began as a business decision. It became a referendum on America's economic soul. So now the road forks. On one path, a bold, uncertain leap into electric innovation, battery plants, clean energy grids, global supply webs humming across continents. On the other, a call to return to the roar of combustion engines, to the reliability of domestic production, to the pride of things built here. And stuck in the middle are the workers. Not just auto workers, but logistics teams, tool makers, truck drivers, restaurant owners whose livelihoods orbit the gravitational pull of the manufacturing sector. This is their storm. They're not tracking EV stock trends or lithium futures. They're watching their hours get cut, their benefits expire, their communities grow quiet. Trump sees an opening. His message isn't nuanced, but it's effective. They took your jobs. I'll bring them back. It's a simple promise, rooted in anger, wrapped in nationalism. And for people who feel forgotten by a changing economy, that promise lands like a lifeline. Meanwhile, GM continues its transformation, quietly, strategically, building partnerships with battery firms, doubling down on clean tech, shifting resources into R&D hubs and future mobility labs. But each new initiative seems to come with a trade-off. For every electric Hummer produced, there's a town that lost its truck plant. For every futuristic concept revealed at CES, there's a working-class family now visiting food banks. And so, the tension escalates. This isn't just a policy debate anymore. It's an ideological battle. Is the future built on globalization or restoration? On lithium or loyalty? On electric dreams or fossil fuel grit? And no one, not Trump, not Barra, not even economists, has a certain answer. Because this isn't a clean transition. It's a messy transformation. And it's happening in real time. In the background, more factories fall silent. More workers clock out for the last time. More headlines scream of tariffs, stock slides, and production halts. But underneath the noise, something else stirs. A question. One whispered by welders, whispered in picket lines, whispered at kitchen tables late at night. What happens to us when the future does include us? This question haunts the American industrial heartland. It will echo in the halls of Congress, in the boardrooms of Detroit, in the campaign ads of 2024. Because this is no longer just GM's gamble. It is America's reckoning. And whether the road ahead runs on gasoline, lithium, or raw political will, one thing is certain. It won't wait for anyone.